Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
The demons changed appearance to look like the woman's husbands. They filled the women with that spirit of darkness and wickedness. They brought into being gold and silver, money and coins, iron and other metals, and all things of this sort. And the people who were attracted were led astray into troubles and were greatly misled. They grew old, experiencing no pleasure, and died, finding no truth, never knowing the true God. This is the way that they enslaved all of creation from the foundation of the world until now. The apocryphon of John. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio. And as always, it's a great honor for me to be here, joined with you in fellowship and utilizing this platform to gather together as ecclesia from all places, wherever you may be upon the plane of the earth. It's really incredible that we can share this chance, this opportunity to gather in this manner and to speak about all things esoteric. And so this evening, as we have in title for the name of the show, Atlantis, the prior times, and the reign, the rule of the Dragon Lords, I'm going to be speaking about and covering some of what I have been focused in working on with regard to the latest manuscript. And it's been an interesting last few weeks in going over this material and considering how I wanted to lay it out to present the story for you. Because there's a lot of mythology, especially that which is connected to the Atlanteans and to the prior times, to what the Egyptians called Zep Tepe, the first times, that a lot of people are really starting to consider this particular topic in this area of research, whereas most people have not previously, and majority opinion is still against belief in, that there was an age prior to the one that we live in. I personally believe there's an overwhelming amount of evidence, and that one would have to really deny the realities of even what we are dealing with, contending with in the archaeological record and the mythological record, the oral traditions of people all over the world, to even what the ancient historians declare themselves about the prior times. And so in talking about the archons, as I made mention in the opening quotation, what Paul speaks about and references in Ephesians chapter 6, even though it's my opinion that most people do not fully grasp what he is alluding to in these passages, that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers, principalities, the rulers of darkness and wickedness in high places, that people think, especially if anybody has examined, looked at, and knows about the New World Order, people really consider that these elitist bloodlines, that they are top of the pyramid. They are it when it comes to knowing who your enemy is. But this is not the truth. The truth is we are in a spiritual war, and that this war, as it's been spoken of in the ancient narrative, the biblical creation story, the rebellion of the angels, the fall of the 1/3 of the angels of the Most High, which joined Lucifer in rebellion, that these things have been spoken about, but not understood. And that's unfortunate, because if you really look at and examine the story of what is still considered esoteric within the ancient manuscripts, it is, in my opinion, it's all laid out that God has revealed what has occurred in the distant past and how it leads or led to where we are now. And so this is the story we're going to examine this evening. And this is the topic of, as I said, the book that I am working on now. And it's a topic which I've written about previously in many of the titles that I have already released, but it's not one that I had specifically addressed in the manner that I am now. And so this will encompass the fullness of the story. Which, again, for those that are new to this issue and how it unites in theme, even the war in heaven and what is this celestial insurgency of Lucifer and the 1/3 of the angels that joined him, the rebel angels, the fallen ones, and even as to when they were cast out of the upper heavens, and how this also unites in theme with not only the destruction of the first world age, but also with what is the reestablishment of the earth for the second world age. These are all very important elements of trying to make sense of how even the whole theme for the coming of Christ and his entrance into mortal form, to be born of Adam's seed and to come in through immaculate conception. These are all the reasons for why he came in first and will return in second advent. And so very critical. And as we covered in a show that I did just recently with Kingdom in Context, that part of really discerning and making sense of this narrative is to understand the differentiation between what is paradise, our first estate, and that of the Garden of Eden, or where Adam and Eve were banished to after their temptation and their eating the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, as well as what that tree was and how it affected them, what the consequences of their eating this supposed fruit, how it played out, and what is the fate and destiny of humankind. And also how it links even to where we find ourselves now in current flesh embodiment. And so all of these things are important, in my opinion, if you are trying to make sense of the larger questions and the larger reasons for our being here in the flesh. Um, the whole thing of who we are, why we are, where we are, what's going on, all these major, major questions of which all people should be considering when it comes to trying to make sense of it all. And then again, the incorporation to Christ, the cross, being the Passover lamb, being redeemed through this lamb without spot or blemish, the whole thing of John the Baptist, behold the lamb that takes away the sins of the world, the theme of the Levitical feast days as laid out by the Most High for forever mandate and observance by Israel, Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, Shavuot, Yom Teruah, Yom Hibberkrim, and Sukkot. How these particular feast days also fit in and prophetically align with, again, the first and second coming of Christ, which, for those that are interested in, they ask, well, what will be the time of the end? What will be the season of your return and of the end of the age? Well, Christ tells us that he's going to return again on what will be Yom Teruah, the Feast of Trumpets. And that the 3 remaining fall feasts and the fulfillment of them in connection with his return and taking on, the judgment seat, and also even with the harvest and who would be numbered as worthy amongst the elect to enter into New Jerusalem for the millennial reign, and even its descent from out of the heavens, all these things are forecast to be associated with the fulfillment of those fall feasts, which is, a reason why people should study and examine the Old Testament, the Moedim, as laid out by Yahuwah, because he reveals in the Levitical 23, in those 7 feasts, these are the true holy days. These are the feast days and festivals which we all should still be in recognition of and in celebration, I believe, in some manner, at least acknowledging and or at least knowing, understanding what they encompass, what they mean, and how they are tied into the birth, the coming of Christ as Emmanuel, and Yahuwah's salvation. which again is why I believe that, the Old New Testament and the apocrypha should all be read and studied together as one collective story, one account of, the fall of humanity and how we would be redeemed through and by the Son of God as a portion, the word of the Lord, a portion of the triune Godhead, that the plan of redemption was set even before the foundations of the world were established. And all these things are revealed within the word. But again, the whole story of, the fall of the angels, the rebellion, and how all that ties into the coming of Christ and the fall of humanity, this is something that precedes, leads up to, and is critical for understanding the latter themes. What are some of the core tenets for Christianity as a faith? And why it is that we know without a doubt that salvation is through Christ. And it's not just because we are, not because we believe we are superior in any manner, or that our faith or our religion or our belief is superior than that of anybody else's out there. It's just that when you study and come to understand truth, you know that there is but one Messiah. And then the pantheon of gods and goddesses that are celebrated, worshiped worldwide, that these beings are nothing more than the angels that were cast out and banished by Christ so very long ago. And that he even told us, I saw Satan as lightning fall from the heavens. Well, there's a reason why he reveals that. Because it was he who cast him out and banished him from the upper heavens, exiled him from his presence. And so the whole punishment of the fallen angels, not only being placed under the authority of death, but the main punishment is that they are exiled from the presence of God, which, he's our maker. And how sad would that be? To lose the favor of your creator. I'm gonna, well, I probably won't read this. It's quite long. But I'll go ahead and we're going to get into the story, because I know there's a lot that I want to cover, and I know that it will quickly go by, and that I'm probably going to have to do a two-part to this series. Let me go first to chapter 55 of the first book of Adam and Eve. Because here we can get insight into this particular story. Give me just a minute. I have to convert these Roman numerals. And I'm not always good at that. 50. Maybe this is it. Hopefully this is it. But once I find it, it will be worth it. Give me just a minute. Okay, here we go. It's always so awkward. Okay. Here we go. It's LV. How strange, but... Okay, what it says in this particular text, this is the conflict of Satan. Then came the word of God to Adam and Eve, and raised them from their dead state, saying unto them, Why came ye up hither? Do you intend to go into the garden from which I brought you out? It cannot be today, but only when the covenant I have made with you is fulfilled. And so you see, it is the word of God, which is Christ, the Logos, that instructs Adam about their being banished and how he will raise them up 5,500 days, 5,500 years after they are banished out of the heavens. And then the angels said unto Adam, Thou didst hearken to Satan, and didst forsake the word of God who created thee. And thou didst believe that Satan would fulfill all he had promised thee. But now, O Adam, we will make known to thee what came upon us through him before his fall from heaven. And so here the angels are going to recant the story of their struggle with Satan previous to the creation of Adam. And so we know that this was all before the creation of Adam and even the Pre-Adamites, and even before the foundations of the world. He gathered together his hosts and deceived them, promising to give them a great kingdom, a divine nature, and other promises he made them. His hosts believed that his word was true, so they yielded to him and renounced the glory of God. He then sent for us according to the orders in which we were to come, under his command, and to hearken to his vain promise. But we would not, and we took not his advice. Then, after he had fought with God and had dealt forwardly with him, he gathered together his hosts and made war with us. And if it had not been for God's strength that was with us, we could not have prevailed against him to hurl him from heaven. But when he fell from amongst us, there was great joy in heaven because of his going down from us. For had he continued in heaven, Nothing, not even one angel, would have remained in it. But God, in his mercy, drove him from among us to this dark earth, for he had become darkness itself and a worker of unrighteousness. And he has continued, O Adam, to make war against thee, until he beguiled thee and made thee come out of the garden to this strange land where all these trials have come to thee. And death which God brought upon him, he has also brought to thee, O Adam, because thou didst obey him, and thou didst transgress against God. Okay. And so you see how the story of the devil's battle, rebellion, and his destruction amongst the celestial hosts, how they are all spoken of in this particular verse as having happened before the creation of Adam. And that, in my opinion, the reason why Satan exacts his revenge against Adam and Eve is because he cannot take revenge against Christ, because Christ is God, his maker, and omniscient and almighty. And so Satan cannot do anything. And so he decides to exact his revenge by deceiving the Lord God's most highest creatures, those that were made in his image. And we see in chapter 57 this being expressed. In verse 7 it says, "But now, O Adam, because you fell, you are under my rule, and I am king over you. Because you have obeyed me and have transgressed against your God, neither will there be any deliverance from my hands until the day promised you by your God." Again he said, "Because we do not know the day agreed on with you by your God, nor the hour in which you shall be delivered. For that reason we will multiply war and murder on you and your descendants after you. This is our will and our good pleasure, that we may not leave one of these sons of men to inherit our orders in heaven. For as to our home, Adam, it is in burning fire, but we will not stop our evil doing. No, not one day or 1 hour." And so we see also that they are dedicated, and that in other places it describes how they, like the Watchers did when they decided to take wives of all which they chose, that in similarity the rebel angels had agreed upon making this pact to lead astray the children of humanity and to keep them from looking to redemption in any manner, or in repenting or seeking forgiveness, or in backing off their evil intentions that they made a pact to go for it, and that they were going to seek to kill Adam and his bloodlines from the very beginning onward. And so when they were cast out and the celebration took place, let me open up one other file here. When celebration had taken place amongst the angels in heaven, that they were all very glad that Satan and the rebel angels were gone from them, that they had been cast out. Okay, here we go. The timing of when that occurred can only be found in two places that I've seen in all of the ancient manuscripts that I've studied, read, looked at with regard to the war in heaven. One of those is in Second Enoch, the Book of the Secrets of Enoch, and the other is in the Legends of the Patriarchs and the Prophets. It says, and this is the word of the Lord speaking and revealing to Enoch as to when this occurred, as well as, you know, the whole theme of I saw Satan like lightning fall from the heaven. This is also revealed here. And it says, and one from out of the order of the angels, having turned away with the order that was under him, conceived an impossible thought to place his throne higher than the clouds above the earth, that he might become equal in rank to my power. And I threw him out from the height with his angels, and he was flying in the air continuously above the bottomless. And then on the third day I commanded the earth to make grow great and fruitful trees and hills and seed to sow. Which, for those that are familiar with Scripture, fits exactly in alignment with what is revealed in Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28, where it says, Thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy viols. The worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation. In the sides of the north, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. And yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. And so, without a doubt, this passage from the book of Enoch is particular to this verse in Isaiah 14. Which again, I believe without a doubt that there are several verses where Christ alludes to and speaks about um, the book of Enoch, like when he says that the angels are not given in marriage, that this is also an allusion to something that is found in chapter 15 of the book of Enoch. And so we see that, the rebellion of the angels goes back to a time preceding their being cast out on the second day. And that the war in the heavenlies had finished at this time, which is interesting because in my 10th book on the firmament, the vaulted dome of the earth, I considered the timing of the banishment of the rebel angels with what is the establishment of the rakia, which is the Hebrew word for firmament. That this rakia, being a solid, impenetrable barrier and dividing the waters above from the waters below, that it separates the land of the immortals and God's home and what is the home of the righteous, New Jerusalem, which are all found in the third heaven of paradise. It's all separated from what is those places that are under the dome of the earth and which make up the perishable parts of the world. And so, again, I believe that the fall of, the angels is associated with their creation or the establishment of the firmament on the second day of the creation week, because we see that they're being banished out of the heavens at that time, that God was restructuring the earth for the second world age, and that the boundary of the rakia would be perfect for locking them in and setting them apart for what would be the judgment. of what God had promised to deliver unto them. When he said in Psalms 82 that, you will die the death of a man and falling like one of the princes. Which again is, in my opinion, connected to the fall of Lucifer and his banishment from the heavens. So I think we have a little time to go into what will be the premise of Atlantis, because it is here that one has to consider what is with the recreation and also with the Pre-Adamites that are going to be established as hominids. But even though I do without a doubt believe that Atlantis and the myths of these prior cultures and civilizations, according to Plato, they do play out in what is this world age. However, that there is an aspect of the Atlantean myth and what is the old world, what James Churchward calls the culture of Mu, that there was a civilization which existed during the First World Age and was mighty and unchallenged, technologically superior, and vastly efficient, but becoming evil. And this is also part of the Atlantean myth as well, is that this original culture, having involved itself in technologies and Stargate manipulation and things of that nature, that they were judged in a way that resulted in the earth and all of its creatures being abruptly annihilated. And, this is a difficult thing to kind of make sense of, because to believe that such capacity existed in the world going all the way back. I mean, this is the very distant past. And yet we're talking about an age that was utterly obliterated and wiped out. And I do believe that the Bible also reveals this story as well. And this, again, this book that I'm writing details all of this in great manner. And as I had covered in 2 shows, one on the world that then was, and for this they are unwillingly ignorant, which is part of 2 Peter 3. That in both of those shows I talked about Jeremiah chapter 4, Ezekiel chapter 26, and other verses which biblical, especially 2 Peter chapter 3, goes into this particular time. And so I'm going to ask those of you that are really interested and that want the fullness of this story to review that material because it fits in here. I'll be right back. I'm going to grab a sip of water. Okay. I apologize. I think really I'm doing too many shows and my voice is running out, but I am going to try to limit somewhat a little bit. But anyways, so we're going to go into some of the stories of Atlantis, but just know that even the destruction of Turtle Island that I spoke of in a previous show, and sorry, the story of the destruction of Pangea, what I believe was the way that the earth was united in one giant landmass previous to the destruction of this world and age. That according to the story, even with the destruction of Atlantis, it's said to have disappeared in a single night. And that it was attacked from above and from below. That the Most High had brought judgment against this people and this culture so that it would be efficiently wiped from all but the memory of humankind. That it would be disappeared all but in thought alone. And that the memorial of it would be contained, within the scriptures and within these mythological records, but that it would not be found until there is, even the Edgar Casey prophecies that portions of it would come to light in what would be the last generation. And that some speculate that the discovery of Bimini Row in the Bahamas, that this might be linked to this ancient culture and society, which I do believe holds some truth to it, in that there was mentioned in, I believe it was 2009, in a story about an ancient megalithic site discovered off the coast of Cuba, 90 feet below the waves of the ocean, that this particular ancient society, it had massive pyramidal temples as part of the Cyclopean architecture that was discovered at the bottoms of the sea and embedded into the surrounding land masses. And so when we return from break, I'll read some of that information, and then we'll talk about what is revealed, not from the Bible this time, but what is revealed in some of the other ancient narratives, some of the ancient stories of the destruction of Atlantis, as to what occurred to it, which is, again, verification of the stories that are contained within the scriptures, specific Genesis 1-2, Jeremiah chapter 4, Ezekiel chapter 26, Isaiah chapter 23, Isaiah chapter 45, verse 18, 2nd Esdras, and so there are, numerous places where I believe this destruction is accounted as having occurred. Specifically, again, 2 Peter chapter 3, which I think is very important to understand. Because if you can make sense of what is being portrayed in 2 Peter chapter 3, then without a doubt, you know that there is these two world ages which are mentioned within Scripture, and that the one that we are living in now will be destroyed by fire, which I heard a pastor earlier today. It was really kind of funny. He was talking about global warming and how so many people are, concerned with taking care of the earth, and with, shutting down oil production or this and that, or, they're worried about the carbon emissions and things of that nature. But we're told that at the end of this, before the millennial reign, that the earth and the heavens are going to be destroyed. And he made a joke about how this was not going to be caused by people's hairspray. And I thought that was pretty funny. And it is absolutely true that, all the environmentalists and all the people that are yelling about us overcrowding and depopulating the world, there's no need to concern yourselves with any of that, because the world and the heavens are going to be remade anew. All right, we'll be right back for second hour, and then we'll get into this.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity, but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
Hello everybody. As you know, in our Digital Readers Club, we just finished the Great Commission 3 on the end time apocalypses, and are now moving forward, because of your vote, into the Yahushua Christ, the infancy, gospels, early childhood, and lost year narratives. And so in this particular book, and the reason I compiled it is because there's only one account in the entire Bible that relays anything with regard to the youth of Christ. And it is the story of when he's 13 years old and he leaves Mary and Joseph, and they, retracing their steps, find him teaching the rabbis and the elders in the Holy Temple, the Jerusalem Temple, about the mysteries of the heavens. And so I wanted those of us that are believers and that hold and have faith in Christ to have the fullness of the stories and the accounts of his early life that are available to those that wish to know more. And so that was the reason for the compilation of all of these accounts, is to give you better insight into who our Savior Messiah is and how he was, even in his youth, without question, he was the fullness, the incarnation of God, and that he had the authority even then of life and death, and that Mary used even his bathwater and his swaddling clothes to heal leprosy and to bring people out of their demonic possessions. And so I believe that the study of this material will greatly bless your life and help you to better understand the core tenets of why we believe on him and know without question that salvation is through him.
Everyday questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses,
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible?
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, for a second hour. I am your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio, and we are covering this evening the Atlantean prior times and the rule of the Dragon Lords, which another thing that I cover in great detail within this book is the connections of what are Revelation 12 to the serpent in the garden and to what Paul references in 2 Corinthians chapter 11 with the serpent beguiling Eve, and that it is the dragon, the plumed serpent, which is the progenitor, the father, the enemy which snuck into the garden and that sowed the tares. That we are told that this enemy is the wicked one, the 1 John chapter 3, verse 12, Cain, who was the wicked one, and that the devil is the father of the tares. And all of that is revealed in great detail in Matthew chapter 13. But what a lot of people don't recognize is that this entity is also the not the Matthew chapter 13, but is the feathered serpent, the pinioned basilisk, the winged reptile that was worshipped all throughout the antediluvian times by the pre-Adamic peoples. That this is all the same entity. And that's why we see Satan referenced in Revelation 12, verse 9, as being that old serpent, that ancient dragon which deceiveth the whole world. And that this particular entity is connected to the seraphim angels, which Sarah meaning snake or serpent, that it was this class of angels which banished with him were part of the ones that were cast out by the Most High in those ancient times. And there's something that I want to share with you about that. Before we even go into some of the stories of Atlantis, because this is going to absolutely blow your mind. And it has something to do with what an individual named Kreta Mutwa had revealed as well. He's a South African Sangoma, which means medicine man. And he spoke about this being and these particular beings that they were told by their people in very, very ancient times that the oral tradition passed down through his people goes back to very ancient primordial times, and that he described the descent of these particular beings, that they had a crocodilian appearance. And that when they arrived here, they demanded to the people that they be worshipped as their gods, and that there was incorporated into the religion of these ancient times and these ancient peoples, there was a demand for blood sacrifice. And so you find that a lot with these pagan deities, is that there's a requisite for victim or child sacrifice with some of the ancient worship. So I'm going to read this story, and then I'm going to share with you a couple of other modern testimonies. And like I said, if we need to, we can always do a follow-up where we look at some of the mythologies. And this would be the oral traditions connected to Atlantis and the Atlanteans. But this is what Credo Mutwa said of these particular deities. But when the Chitauri arrived in Africa, they told our people that they were gods and that they were going to give us human beings great gifts on one condition. We had to worship them and accept them as our creators. Some told our people that they were our elder brothers and that this earth had produced them generations ago. And they said they had come back to the green womb of their mother, the earth, and that they were going to make us into gods. Jabalon, that's the name of this particular deity, which, well, you'll see. Jabalon, sir, is a very strange god. He is supposed to be the leader of the Chitauri, or the Chitauri. He is a god, to my great surprise, which I find certain groups of white people especially worshiping. We have known about Jabalon for many, many centuries, we black people. But I am surprised that there are white people who worship this god. And these people amongst them are people whom many have blamed for all the things that have happened on the earth, namely the Freemasons. We believe that Jabalon is the leader of the Chitauri. He is the old one, and one of his names in the African language, sir, is Umbaba Samhongo, the Lord King, the great father of the terrible eyes. Because we believe that Jabalon has got one eye, which if he opens it, you die if he looks at you. Now think of, the Gorgons, Medusa, how if they look upon you, they can stiffen you in fright, turn you to stone. Before human beings were created on this planet, this plane, there had existed a very wise race of people known as the Emmanuela. These people had come from the constellation known to white people as Orion, and they had inhabited our earth for thousands and thousands of years. And that before they had left our earth to return once more to the sacred spider constellation, they made a great evacuation towards under the earth. Beneath the Ruwenzori mountains, the mountains of the moon, and deep in the bowels of the mother earth, the Emmanuela built a city of copper buildings, a city with a wall of silver all around it, a city built at the huge mountain of pure crystal. The mountain of knowledge, the mountain from which all knowledge on earth comes, and a mountain to which all knowledge on earth ultimately returns. No matter where you go in Africa, no matter how deep into the interior of the dark continent you tread, you will find very ancient stories, which are all incredibly similar. You will find African tribes and races who will tell you that they are descendants from gods who came out of the skies thousands of years ago. Some, however, say that these gods came to them from the sea in magical boats made out of reeds or wood or copper or even gold. In some cases, these gods and goddesses are described as beautiful human beings whose skins were either bright blue or green or even silver. But most of the time, you will find it being said of these great gods, especially the ones that came out of the sky, that were non-human, scaly creatures, which lived most of the time in mud or in water. Creatures of an extremely frightening and hideously ugly appearance. Some say that these creatures were like crocodiles with crocodile-like teeth and jaws, but with very large, round heads. Some say that these creatures are very tall beings with snake-like heads set on long, thin necks, very long arms, and very long legs. These are those that tell us that these gods who came from the skies traveled throughout the land in magical boats made of bright metals. Silver, copper, or gold. Boats which had the ability to sail over water or even to fly through the sky like birds. In Africa, we are told that these mysterious beings taught human beings many things. They taught human beings how to have laws, knowledge of herbal medicine, knowledge of arts, and knowledge of the mysteries of creation and the cosmos as a whole. We are told that some of these gods had the ability to change their shape at will. They had the ability to assume the shape and the appearance of any creature that there is on the earth, whatever. And whenever they had some good reason to do so. A sky god could even turn itself into a rhinoceros or an elephant or even a stork. A sky god could even turn itself into a rock or a tree. In Africa, these mysterious gods are known by various names. In West Africa, in the land of the Bumbara people, These amphibian or reptilian sky gods are known as the Jishwezi. The words Jishwezi either means either the swimmers or the divers or the gliders. It was said that these sky gods could dive from above the clouds down to the top of a mountain whenever they felt like it, and they could also take deep dives into the bottom of the ocean and from there fetch magical objects and then bring them to the shore, placing them at the feet of the astonished black people. In the land of the Dogon people, we find the famous Nomo, a race of reptilian or amphibian beings who were said to have come forth from the Sirius star to give knowledge and religion to the black people of Dogon. One is told that when the Nomo arrived from the sky in their fantastic skyships, there were several of them, 13 or 14 of them, and they created a lake around their skyship. And every morning they used to swim from their skyship to the shores of the lake and there preach to the people who assembled in large numbers around the lake. It is said that before the Nomo departed, returning with a great noise back to their home star, they first chose one of their number, killed it, cut its body up into little pieces, and then gave these pieces to the assembled people to eat in the first sacrificial ritual of its kind. And when the people had eaten the sacred flesh of the star creature and drunk its blood mixed with water, the Nomo took the lower jaw of their creature and by some incredible fact of magic brought the whole being back to life again. We are told that this is the way that the Nomo taught our people, that there is no death and that behind every death there shall be a resurrection. In the Americas and South and Central America mostly, the feathered serpent is called Quetzalcoatl. And amongst my people, the Zulus, we find belief in a serpent called Yandandala. The Yandandala is said to be a huge mamba or a huge python whose neck is covered in grayish bluish feathers. Like the feathers of a blue crane, and at the top of the serpent's head grow 3 feathers, one green, one red, and one white, which look like huge ostrich tail feathers. Credo mutua. And so you see that, even these stories, which are very ancient, oral traditions passed down from wise man to wise man, and that Credo even talked about how many of his people and those that were against him sharing this knowledge, that his life was put at risk when he revealed this story to David Icke and then shared it with the world at that time. And the reason that Icke had brought this story forth was because of something that Princess Diana had told a close confidant of hers, a Christine Fitzgerald, about the royal family. And it was something that another eyewitness, an individual named Arizona Wilder, who was brought up in these particular Illuminati bloodlines, that she was a black magic magician called a mother goddess who performed rituals of sex magic to propagate this particular bloodline, and to also to focus its energies, and through strategic marriage to heighten these individuals, their capabilities when it came to black magic, ritual incantation, arcane demonology, and their ability to conjure, to invoke devils, to call them forth in circle, and to, utilize pentagrams and things of that nature it's crazy. The stuff that is said to be connected to these ancient bloodlines and belief in them. And so I'll share with you these two stories. And I think that will probably be where we have to leave it. And then, as I said, we'll look again in a follow-up on the Atlantean mythologies. I would also remind people that as bizarre as these accounts sound, and as unbelievable as this knowledge seems, that when it comes to the Bible, this knowledge is confirmed scripturally. And I can share with you those verses as well. But, even what we've been recently talking about in this show is just too bizarre for people to believe. And that's why it escapes imagining and consideration. And so, most people simply can't allow themselves to embrace it as truth, or to take the moment to really consider that this might be what's really going on. All right. This is the testimony of Christine Fitzgerald. The Queen Mother. Now that's a serious piece of wizardry. The Queen Mother is a lot older than people think. To be honest, the royal family hasn't died for a long time. They have just metamorphosed. It's sort of cloning, but in a different way. They take pieces of flesh and rebuild the body from one little bit because it's a lizard, because it's cold-blooded. It's much easier for them to do Frankenstein stuff than it is for us. The different bodies are just different electrical vibrations, and they have got that secret. They've got the secret of the microcurrents. It's so micro, so specific. These radio waves that actually create the bodies. These are the energies I work with when I'm healing. They know the vibration of life, and because they are cold-blooded, they are reptiles. They have no wish to make the earth the perfect harmony it could be, or to heal the earth from the danger and from the damage that's been done. The earth has been attacked for Zeons by different extraterrestrials. It's been like a football for so long. This place was a bus stop for many different aliens. All these aliens, they could cope with everything, including the noxious gases. Now, let me just put a disclaimer forth here. It's my opinion that the ancient aliens, the extraterrestrials, the Anunnaki, and those who say they are from a different world, that these entities are all demonic, and that they reside right here on the earth and have always been since at least the reestablishment of the Second World Age. They've been locked here and are only parading as if they are from somewhere out there. All right, continuing. They're landing all the time and coming up from the bowels of the earth. They look like reptiles originally, but they look like us when they get out. Now, through the electrical vibration, that life key I talked about, they can manifest how they want to. All the real knowledge has been taken out and shredded and put back in another way. The Queen Mother is chief toad of this part of Europe. And they have people like her in each continent. Most people, the hangers-on, don't know, about the reptiles. They are just in awe of these people because they are so powerful. Balmoral is a very, very nasty place. That's somewhere they want to dig underground. They will find reptile fossils. It goes back that far. Don't think of people like the Queen Mother and Queen Victoria as different people Think of them as the same person, which after a while has to replace their coat. When the flesh dies, that energy, while it's dying, will be immediately up someone else's jack ski backside. It's very vampire, worse than vampire. They're not going to come to you with hooked teeth and suck your blood. Fear is their food. They can actually take fear and manifest it into a terrible thing. The key is the vibrational current. At that vibrational current, they can manifest anything from anything. It's like a holographic image. We are all minerals and water vibrating. This is all an illusion we are living in. That's the secret, you know. When the monarchy's fallen, it's not the end of it. They will manifest in another form. The reptiles have never been defeated, and this is the closest they have come to it. The reason they are so threatened today is because the earth is in such terrible, and the mental power of people is returning. This is their most frightening time. But this is not going to kill them. There are long centuries before it's over yet. The difference this time is that it'll be more difficult for them. And they are going to have to settle for less, and the earth people are going to get more. But even though these reptilian ones are effers, they are sad, pathetic beasts, really, while humanity is galloping towards light. They're just pathetic lumps of nastiness who aren't going to win. I can't talk about this everywhere because they would just go, Christine, get a white coat, put it on backwards, and get out. But I want an end to the bull. Shh. Christine Fitzgerald. And, you know, there's a lot of, again, just stuff that people would be very challenged to even think about. Which is, you know, again, is why it's difficult for people to read and really consider this kind of material. But there's a confirming witness to this stuff, as well as the ancient texts themselves. The Emerald Tablets and some of the other stories of Atlantis, they talk about these things as well, which is even, you know, more bizarre. But let me read you a testimony from Arizona Wilder, who, as I said, was part of these elitist bloodlines. And then when she went public with this information, she ended up disappearing. David Icke, is that Project Paperclip you're talking about? Arizona Wilder, yeah, through the OSS and many so-called family are all DID, which, if you don't know, is the dissociative identity disorder, which a lot of people that are part of these elitist bloodlines, they are tortured and they are fractured and they have their personalities split. All right, continue. They are very well programmed and they have not sought help. They have not gone in and tried to figure out what happened. They believe they've had this certain kind of life that they've had, and as far as they are concerned, I am crazy. And they have much different memories of what I have. And I was always told certain things by my parents that my sisters were never told. And biologically, I have to add at this point that my mother is my mother, but I am not biologically related to my father. And this has to do with the bloodlines. And his was considered impure. And this is all about the purity of the bloodline. And that is why I am involved in this. There are people who are involved in this that it is not so much because of bloodline, but that they have the ability to disassociate and to be used as slaves by these people. Davidite, you say that you come from a certain bloodline. And there is this obsession with bloodlines, this brotherhood, the Illuminati have. Why is that, Arizona? Because what first started coming out was about the Aryans and the purity of the blood, and what it's all about is that the blood and the menstrual blood contains something that is important for the propagation of this race that is controlling things on the earth. And these people that are in the organization that the Council of 13 is under, and they have something called the Grand Druid Council or the Octagon. They are called the Illuminati. And the Illuminati are actually run by these 13 bloodlines, which are all of the royal families in Europe and in England. And they need the blood because they are in fact not human. They take human shape, but they are reptilian. And they need the blood. The blood helps them maintain their reptilian shape. And it helps them maintain their sanity. And it helps them to live in this world because they are not from this world. Davidite, does that relate to what the Nazis call virile power and what the Hindus called the serpent power in the blood? Arizona Wilder. Yes, the blood has something in it. It has secretion from the pituitary gland and from the pineal gland. And it has a very strong drug in it. This is the one that keeps them from going crazy. And it's like heroin or like endorphins. And it's much stronger, but what they need for it to be secreted in the blood is terrorization of their victims before they are killed for their blood. This is also related to adrenochrome, for those that know what I'm talking about. Or if a young woman is beginning to menstruate, they need the menstrual blood. And they have to terrorize them to get this amount in the blood to be secreted in the blood. David Icke, is this what other people have told me about, that at the point of great terror, like the point of sacrifice, there's an adrenaline that enters the bloodstream? Is this what they are looking for? Arizona Wilder. Yes. And the other element comes and secretes out through the blood this all comes out through the blood at that time. And it's at that point that they are actually staring into the eyes of the head of it at some of these rituals. Or at a reptilian, they are staring into the eyes of this person, and it's a hypnotic gaze these reptilians have. And it holds the victim in an absolute trance, and a trance of terror. And then they are killed at that moment as they are staring into their eyes, and they can't hold their shape when this happens. The human shape they cannot hold. They go back into reptilian shape as this is happening, because it's like an animalistic type of excitement of the kill. And oftentimes they will just rip into the victim and eviscerate them and start eating the flesh of this person. And the fat from the intestinal area is highly valued as they use it on their skin. And then they drink the blood. And the blood is highly sought after. And it goes also according to rank within these creatures as to who gets what when. And their sacrifices have started increasing in the early 80s. The amount that they were doing has increased, and they use a lot of druidic holidays to do this. But they have other days too. They've mixed all these satanic and what are called satanic holidays and druidic holidays in order to have these rituals, because ritual seems to be important to them. But they also use it in order to drink the blood, which they seem to need more of. Davidite. Have you any idea why it's increased since the 80s? Arizona Wilder. There are changes going on in the earth. It seems they are not able to hold their shape like they once were able to. And people see them shapeshift more and more. And they need the blood to try and maintain it, to try and maintain their human form. I believe there's a time coming, because of what I've been told, when they're not going to bother trying to hold their human shape as they had to before. And they want that time to come. And it is almost upon us. Two things really quickly before we get to the end of the show. One is Micah chapter 3. Which says, "And I said, Hear, I pray you, O heads of Jacob, and ye princes of the house of Israel. Is it not for you to know judgment, who hate the good and love the evil, who pluck off their skin from off of them, and their flesh from off their bones, who also eat the flesh of my people, and flay their skin from off of them, and they break the bones and chop them in pieces, as for the pot, and as flesh within the cauldron. Then shall they cry unto the Lord, and he will not hear them. He will even hide his face from them at that time, as they have behaved themselves ill in their doings." All right, I want to share one last thing. This is from the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. It says, Speak, I of ancient Atlantis, speak of the days of the kingdom of shadows. Speak of the coming of the children of shadows. Out of the great deep were they called by the wisdom of the earth men, called for the purpose of gaining great power. Far in the past, before Atlantis existed, men there were who delved into darkness, and using dark magic, they called up beings from the great deep below us. Forth came they into this cycle. Formless were they of another vibration, existing unseen by the children of earth men. Only through blood could they have formed being. Only through man could they live in the world. In ages past were they conquered by the masters and driven below to the place whence they came. Some there were who remained hidden in spaces and plains unknown to man. Lived they in Atlantis as shadows, but at times they appeared among men. When the blood was offered, forth came they to dwell among men. In the form of man they amongst us, but only to sight were they as our men. Serpent-headed when the glamour was lifted, but appearing to man as men among men. Crept they into the councils, and taking their forms that were likened to men, slaying by their arts the chiefs of the kingdom, they took over their form and rule over man. Only by magic could they be discovered. Only by sound could their faces be seen. Sought they from the kingdom of shadows to destroy man and to rule in his place. But know ye, the masters were mighty in magic, able to lift the veil from the face of the serpent, able to send him back to his place. Came they to man and taught him the secret, the word that only a man can pronounce. Swift then they lifted the veil from the serpent, cast him forth from his place among men. Yet beware, the serpent still liveth in a place that is open at times to the world. Unseen, they walk among thee in places where the rites have been said. Again, as time passes, onward shall they take the semblance of man. And so, this is an ancient, very ancient text said to be 25,000 years old. And it describes these serpent-headed reptilian beings, the seraphim angels, the Anunnaki, the Nakash of Genesis 6, as taking over the councils of men and ruling in their places. Come on, when the blood is offered in the places where the dark rituals and the ancient magic are performed, this stuff is, in my opinion, still connected to what we see being revealed by Diana, Princess Diana, before her death, because, what she revealed to Christine Fitzgerald and how she was trying to get away from that bloodline resulted in her ritual sacrifice. And so, as bizarre as all this seems, as odd and weird and conspiratorial as it seems, and as challenging it is to your mindset, consider that what is being revealed by the elites of today is the same thing that, Christ even spoke about of the Pharisees that were trying to plot his murder. He said that their fathers were the bloodline connected to Cain, who had been historically the murderers of the prophets, all the way from Abel to Zacharias. And this is still ongoing in this day and age. And so what I'm revealing in this book is connecting the ancient past, the war in heaven, the separation of light and darkness, with what is the enmity between the seed lines, the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and how it is that Cain is left out of the genealogies of Messiah, who, as the seed of the woman, did, when he was crucified on the cross, crush the head of the serpent at the same time that it was nipping at his heel. All these prophecies of his coming, of his return, they have and will be fulfilled in the exact manner that they are revealed within Scripture. And so next week we'll do one final show on this topic, and I believe I'm going to say maybe 4 weeks out from being done with this book. I'm working on it nonstop. I'm trying to get it done. And I think it will bless your life. And I hope that you have a chance to read it. And we are selling it right now, pre-order, and we'll have all of the pre-orders sent out immediately upon publication, which, as I said, should not be very much longer. And there's so much information. It's 427 pages as of right now. And really, at some point, I just have to abandon adding to it and just let it go as it is. Because I'm getting to the point now where if I add any more, I really need to separate, and I don't want to do that. I'll either have to separate some chapters or narrow the focus, but I'm going to try to keep it under 450 pages so that I can keep it all in one book and release it to you for consideration. I appreciate all of you. Don't forget to join us tomorrow evening. Rob Skiba will be on with me on TFR, Secrets Revealed. We greatly appreciate all of you. I hope you enjoyed the show. And as always, please keep an open mind, because I know a lot of the things that I say, a lot of things that I talk about are very controversial in nature and very contrary to majority opinion. But again, everything that I stand with on and that I speak on with regard to truth is confirmed in the Scriptures, and there are multiple sources which verify the things that I say and discuss as truth. Otherwise, I would not say or declare them as such. All right. Be blessed, everyone. Have a good night. Shalom.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.